Welcome back to our channel. Tonight we're gonna delve deep into the mysteries of the waters around the world. So, get comfortable and pick something warm for these terrorizing stories that actually happened. Story 1. The small fishing village of Hanton, Maine, perched on the rugged coastline, was once a thriving community known for its bountiful catches and tight-knit families. Established in the early 1800s, Hanton's isolation and the treacherous seas surrounding it forged a hardy and resilient population. However, by the mid-20th century, the village became the setting for a series of inexplicable and chilling events that would eventually lead to its abandonment. In the early 1950s, Hanton began to suffer a series of strange disappearances. It started with lone fishermen who would go out to sea and never return. Their boats were found drifting aimlessly, fishing gear intact, but the men were nowhere to be seen. Initially, these incidents were attributed to the dangerous waters and unpredictable weather, but as the disappearances increased, fear and paranoia gripped the village. By the late 1950s, entire fishing crews started to vanish. One particularly harrowing case involved the crew of the Sea Nymph, a well-known vessel captained by Jonas Graves. The ship set out on a clear summer morning, but when it failed to return by evening, a search party was dispatched. The Sea Nymph was found floating eerily calm, all its gear undisturbed, but every crew member was missing. Not a single sign of struggle or distress was evident. The villagers began to whisper about a curse or a malevolent force lurking in the waters. Some claimed to see strange lights beneath the surface of the ocean at night, while others reported hearing disembodied voices calling to them from the shore. These supernatural occurrences fueled speculation that the spirits of those who had disappeared were trapped at sea, haunting the village they once called home. By the 1960s, Hanton's population had dwindled significantly. Families moved away, unable to bear the constant fear and loss. The village, once filled with the sounds of daily life, became silent and desolate. The few who remained lived in a state of perpetual dread, their nights filled with the eerie cries of the lost and the sight of ghostly figures wandering the shores. In 1972, the last of the villagers left Hanton, unable to endure the haunting presence any longer. The village was left to the elements, its buildings slowly decaying, overtaken by nature. Visitors and paranormal enthusiasts occasionally explore the abandoned village, reporting strange occurrences and an overwhelming sense of being watched. The story of Hanton remains a chilling testament to the power of the unknown, a place where the line between reality and the supernatural blurs, and where the sea holds its secrets tight. Story 2. In 2007, a seasoned fisherman named Jake ventured into the Blackwater River in Florida, known for its murky, dark waters and rich biodiversity. Jake was well aware of the alligators that inhabited the area, but his years of experience gave him a sense of confidence. One sweltering afternoon, while casting his line from his small boat, he felt an unusually strong tug. Assuming he had hooked a massive fish, Jake braced himself for a struggle. To his horror, an enormous alligator, over 12 feet long, erupted from the water, clamping its powerful jaws around the side of his boat. The force of the attack nearly capsized the vessel. Jake frantically grabbed his oar, attempting to fend off the beast, but the alligator was relentless. The boat rocked violently as water splashed in, and Jake realized he was in a fight for his life. Desperate, he jabbed the alligator in the eye with the oar, causing it to release its grip momentarily. Seizing the opportunity, Jake paddled furiously towards the shore, his heart racing. The alligator, dazed and injured, retreated into the depths. Once on land, Jake examined the damage. His boat was heavily scarred, and he himself was shaken but unharmed. He reported the harrowing encounter to wildlife authorities, who later captured the aggressive alligator. Story 3. In the summer of 2014, an experienced fisherman named Mark set out on a solo expedition into the remote wilderness of northern Canada. Mark had always been drawn to the tranquility of nature, finding solace in the quiet and isolation far from civilization. This trip, however, would turn out to be unforgettable for reasons he never imagined. On the second day of his journey, Mark found himself at a secluded, crystal-clear lake, surrounded by dense forest and shrouded in early morning fog. The scene was serene, almost otherworldly, but there was a palpable eeriness in the air. As the sun rose higher, Mark cast his line into the lake, eager to catch the day's first fish. Hours passed, and as he was reeling in what he thought was a sizable catch, He noticed something unusual tangled in his fishing line. Pulling it closer, his heart raced as he realized it was a human hand, partially decomposed, still clutching a fishing rod. The sight was ghastly, the skin pale and bloated from prolonged exposure to the water. Mark's initial shock turned to nausea, but he knew he had to report the discovery. He quickly radioed the nearest ranger station, his voice trembling as he described the gruesome find. Within hours, authorities arrived at the scene. A thorough search of the lake ensued, revealing more body parts, eventually identified as belonging to a local man who had been reported missing months earlier. The investigation uncovered that the man had been fishing when he was attacked, likely by a bear, which had dragged him into the water. The remains indicated a violent struggle, with deep gashes and claw marks on the bones. The incident left the tight-knit community shaken, a grim reminder of the dangers lurking in the wild. And what do you think that happened in these stories? Any thoughts you want to share? Make sure to write down in the section below. Remember to like and subscribe for more tales like these. Story 4. Deep in the dense forests of Maine, an old fishing lodge sat beside a serene, isolated lake. Built in the early 1900s, the lodge was a popular destination for anglers seeking a peaceful retreat away from the bustle of daily life. However, it was also rumored to be haunted. Local legend told of a former lodge owner, Robert, who had mysteriously vanished one winter night in the 1930s. Despite extensive searches, his body was never found, and strange occurrences had been reported at the lodge ever since. Visitors often spoke of inexplicable cold drafts, disembodied whispers, and the unsettling feeling of being watched. One particularly disturbing account came from a group of fishermen in the 1980s. They arrived at the lodge on a crisp autumn evening, eager to enjoy a weekend of fishing and camaraderie. That night, as they settled in, they heard footsteps echoing through the attic. Assuming it was an animal, one of the men, Mike, decided to investigate. Armed with a flashlight, Mike climbed the creaky wooden stairs to the attic. As he reached the top, the temperature plummeted, and a raspy voice whispered, "Leave now." The flashlight flickered, and in the dim light, Mike saw a shadowy figure standing in the corner, its eyes glowing faintly. Terrified, he rushed back downstairs, his heart pounding. The group, now on edge, decided to stick together for the rest of the night. The next morning, they found muddy footprints leading from the front door to the bedroom where Mike had slept. Despite the clear weather outside, the windows were frosted over, as if touched by an unseen icy hand. The group left the lodge that day, never to return. The haunted fishing lodge remains a site of eerie fascination, with each new visitor adding their own tale to the legend of Robert's restless spirit. Story 5. In 1995, a father named Mark and his teenage son, Jake, decided to spend a weekend fishing at Lake Lanier in Georgia, a reservoir known for its deep, serene waters and abundant fish. The lake, created in the 1950s by flooding valley communities, had a history steeped in tales of drowned towns and submerged cemeteries, adding an eerie backdrop to their outing. As dusk settled, Mark and Jake anchored their small boat in a secluded cove, casting their lines and enjoying the quiet evening. It wasn't long before they noticed another boat drifting closer to them. Initially, they thought it was just another late-night fisherman. As the boat drew nearer, they saw an elderly man, dressed in old-fashioned fishing gear, sitting motionless at the edge, repeatedly casting his line into the water without ever reeling it in. Curiosity turned to concern as the man continued his silent, repetitive motions. Mark called out, "Hey there, need any help?" But the man remained unresponsive, his vacant eyes staring straight ahead. The closer they got, the more they realized something was terribly off. His skin appeared unnaturally pale, almost translucent under the moonlight. Suddenly, the temperature around them dropped, and an oppressive silence fell over the lake. Jake, feeling a chill run down his spine, urged his father to turn back. Before Mark could respond, the old man on the boat turned his head slowly towards them. His eyes, hollow and dark, seemed to pierce through them, sending a wave of dread. Without warning, the man vanished into thin air, leaving the boat eerily empty. Shaken, Mark and Jake quickly retreated to shore and reported their encounter to the local authorities. They were met with knowing looks and were told that they weren't the first to witness the phantom fisherman. Local legends spoke of an old fisherman named Samuel who had drowned in the lake decades ago. Desperate to make one last great catch, Samuel was said to have defied warnings of an incoming storm and ventured out into the treacherous waters. His boat was found the next day, capsized, but his body was never recovered. Since then, many have reported seeing his ghostly figure, eternally casting his line, bound to the lake in a tragic loop of his final moments.
Story 6.
Nestled deep within the Appalachian Mountains, an old fishing cabin sat abandoned, known to locals as the Ghost Cabin. Built in the 1800s, the cabin had a dark and storied history. During the Civil War, a deserter from the Confederate Army had taken refuge there, only to be discovered and executed by Union soldiers. According to legend, his restless spirit haunted the cabin, seeking vengeance for his untimely death. In the 1990s, a group of friends decided to spend a weekend fishing and camping near the cabin, dismissing the ghost stories as mere folklore. On their first night, strange things began to happen. One of them, Mike, woke up to the sound of footsteps on the creaky wooden floor. Thinking it was one of his friends, he called out, but there was no response. The next morning, they discovered muddy footprints leading from the front door to the bedroom where Mike had slept. The eerie findings set a somber tone, but the group brushed it off and continued their trip. That evening, while they sat around the campfire, they heard faint whispers coming from the direction of the cabin. The whispers grew louder, sounding like anguished cries. The final straw came when one of the friends saw a translucent figure in Confederate attire standing by the cabin window, its eyes glowing with a malevolent light. Terrified, they packed up and left in the middle of the night, vowing never to return. The haunted cabin remains abandoned, a chilling testament to its ghostly resident, who continues to guard his solitary post in the Appalachian wilderness.
Story 7.
In 2010, a group of friends went on a fishing trip to a remote lake in the Adirondack Mountains, known for its pristine waters and abundant fish. They set up camp and spent the day enjoying the serenity of the untouched landscape. As evening approached, a thick fog rolled in, shrouding the lake in an eerie silence. Despite the unusual weather, they decided to stay another night, eager to continue fishing the next day. When they awoke the following morning, the lake was gone. Where there had been water the day before, there was now only a dry, cracked basin. Confused and alarmed, they scoured the area for any sign of the lake or its outflow but found nothing. It was as if the lake had vanished overnight, taking with it all the fish and wildlife. The group quickly packed up and returned to town, reporting the bizarre occurrence to the local authorities. Geologists and environmental scientists investigated but found no plausible explanation for the sudden disappearance. The lake's vanishing act became a local legend, with theories ranging from underground rivers to supernatural forces. To this day, the mystery of the vanishing lake remains unsolved, baffling those who dare to ponder its fate. As we reel in the end of today's journey into the unknown, we're left with haunting questions and eerie images that linger in the mind. The stories we've explored remind us that the calm, reflective surface of the water can hide deep, dark secrets. Whether it's the unexplained disappearances, ghostly apparitions, or abandoned villages swallowed by time, these tales blur the line between reality and the supernatural. If you enjoyed this plunge into the eerie side of fishing stories, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe for more spine-tingling stories. Share your own fishing horror stories in the comments below. We'd love to hear them. Keep your lines tight and your senses sharper. Who knows what might be lurking beneath the surface?
Until next time.